Welcome to the Market Review, where we discuss developments in the financial and capital market as it affects the populace. It's another interesting Tuesday as we continue this conversation, and today we'll be looking at the unlisted securities market. What are the opportunities for growth in this market that continues to show enormous prospects for growth and development in the entire Nigerian capital market ecosystem? I'll be having this conversation today with the Managing Director of the NASD Plc, Mr. Bola Ajomale. Nice to have you for the second time on our show.
Hi, how are you doing? Very good to be here.
Thank you very much, yes. Let's begin with the fact that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, which really disrupted global financial market activities last year, is beginning to ease as we see major economies ease out from the lockdown to resume activities. But its impacts, adverse impacts, are felt from hospitality to the oil and gas and manufacturing sectors. We know that the NASD, through the venture ramp, has provided a platform for supporting businesses. So we would want to know, has there been traction in terms of businesses leveraging this platform at this time?
Well, thanks for that. Yes, we opened up the platform towards the end of last year when I wouldn't say the pandemic was even easing out, but when we were beginning to see the end of the trough that was created by the pandemic. A lot of companies have not yet accessed it. We are still building interest in the platform. We've seen that a lot of, even though the issuers may be very attracted to issuing off the platform, investors are not very quick to invest off that platform. I think there's going to be some time before people start moving en masse into crowdfunding efforts. What we have seen, however, is that there's been a larger interest in donor crowdfunding as opposed to investing crowdfunding. So I think the first push would be, and we have got some clients already who are lined up for donor crowdfunding. I think the push would be more, and the first initiatives will be more on the donor side than on the investing side. And then as time goes on, we'll start seeing the collective investment scheme kind of structure coming in. And that would be what would drive the second part of it, which is the investor side crowdfunding. I expect that by the next quarter, we'll start seeing that happening. So for now, we haven't seen a lot of traction in donor investment, in investor crowdfunding, but we have seen some activity in donor crowdfunding.
Okay, very, very nice to know that at least the third quarter, we hope to see lots and lots of at least one or two or three significant activities for businesses leveraging the platform. And of course, like you said, already.
And I think I'd like to add something else to that, which is the fact that because of the potential risks of crowdfunding and because of the size of the crowdfunding efforts, most of them are relatively small, there is a possibility of getting numerous crowdfunding campaigns coming through. It is us as a very responsible platform, we would like to make sure that we have vetted the campaigns very well before we actually release them to the public to go out. And that is because we're obviously a SEC-registered SRO. And so rather than rolling out opportunities with every single opportunity that comes our way, we actually have a very firm vetting process that I wouldn't say ensures, but at least increases the chances of success of any crowdfunding effort that we do roll out.
So definitely, these campaigns are very important to create the awareness and enlighten the investors and donors and all those are interested because of the value that it will create. We know that if we are resumed fully from the impact of the pandemic, we talk about roadshows too. I mean, just create that awareness and interaction with the investment community. And so that's something to look out for. And it's nice to get those updates from the NSD. Now, of course, we know that one of the big stories for the NSD, our first interview we had with you, Market Review last year, was the NGX, the Nigerian Exchange post-demutualization listing on the NSD platform. That has happened, and a lot of activities have occurred. Definitely, it has increased activities in the unlisted securities market. But has this significant listing, would other potential listings in the unlisted securities market. How has it been since then, having this big one, what you call a big fish in the market?
So there's a lot of cause and effect, and you can drive it any way you want. We have last year we saw only very few entries into the market. Very few. I think we saw only one or two. No, we saw two entries into the market last year. This year, so far, we have seen three, and we have another two lined up. You could attribute it to the shares of NGX coming in. On the other hand, you could say because there was a lot of pent-up activity that was in suspension last year, that's all coming through this year. So it depends. I mean, you can reduce it to various things. No doubt, however, the entry of NGX shares into NASD has created numerous effects, most of which we anticipated. For one, obviously, it's a significant security to come into the market. In addition, is that it came with its own 400 or so shareholders, and each of those shareholders, most of those shareholders were in the markets already. So it brought in a broader community of operator and investor into the OTC market, some of whom were not particularly active on the OTC market. Suddenly, overnight, essentially by introduction of that security, they are now active, and they're not only active on NGX shares, they're also active on other shares that are on the platform. So it has brought some additional activity. In addition, we've seen the likes of Double One PLC. They just came into the market a few days ago. It shows that, yes, the market is expanding significantly, quite significantly. But at the same time, it also proves the point that there is a certain kind of continuum in the capital market, where securities are either trading on the main board of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, or they're trading on the OTC markets, or they're trading on the fixed income markets, or so on. So really, it goes to prove, or the commodities market. So it goes to prove that basically any investment instrument has a domicile somewhere in the economy. And that's really, for me, the most significant part of it. Again, a lot of people have said, well, if you're trading the shares, isn't there competition between you and the stock exchange? How are you trading their shares and so on? And what we have said is the most important thing for investors is not so much the interaction between the market and the individual players. For the investor, what is most important is that they have got liquidity for their security, that for their investment, that the investment is safe, and that there's transparency around what they're doing. And we are providing a certain assurance of that, just like the other operators of the capital market are doing. So really, the triumph for the Nigerian economy is that the markets are coming together, working together to build a better environment for investors. I think that's really the message that we should be putting across, and that's what we're very happy to be a part of.
I like that message for the investors, the liquidity and transparency. Those two are very critical for any market, from OTC to equities, like you said, and even the fixed income. But there's something, we discussed this last year, getting across board, even state enterprises and various potential companies. The Bureau of Public Enterprise, which has been established since 1999, is now working towards leveraging the capital market to liberalize some Nigerian state enterprises. And I really like that under the leadership of Mr. Alex Oko. It's nice to know that they are working around this. And I just want to understand the approach of the NASD in engaging the BP to woo some of these companies to the unlisted securities market, the OTC market, because there are a lot of opportunities. Some of them may not go to the equities market, they may not leverage the other markets, but this is a very a market with huge potentials that can really also help for them to list on and also achieve those activities.
So for us at NASD, we run over-the-counter markets, we run private markets, we run public markets, we run primary markets, we run secondary markets. So we cover all aspects of the market and we bring a lot of flexibility and innovation into what we do. So for the BP, we have had quite a lot of discussions about which securities should be in which market. I believe there are some securities that are earmarked for each market, essentially, as appropriate. You know, as I said earlier on, for whatever security it is, there's always a market where it can be domiciled, where it can fit into. So there's no reason why you would have a transaction on shares and you'd say there's no market for it. It's either it's a listed security on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, or it's on FMDQ, or it's on LCFE or FX or NASD. There will always be a market for it to domicile too. And I think each of the exchanges are having discussions with BP as to what is best suited for them. Yes, of course, we are talking to BP, and as they do come through, we'll be seeing them. Some of those securities, as you said, are not. They'll find the best fit, and that's probably the best way to put it.
Definitely, we hope so. We hope to see from power to oil and gas and various other enterprises leveraging the market, because a lot of value, like you said, people like transparency, people also like liquidity. I want to also create more opportunities, wealth creation opportunities for Nigerians. Now, regulations are very vital for the development of a vibrant and liquid market. One economist said, Nigeria faces one of the biggest risks of regulatory risk. But how do you assess the current regulatory framework around areas like the crowdfunding, which we know that the NSD has been a big advocate for? We've seen already the SEC has brought out some guidelines around that. How has the engagement enabled SEC to provide those enablers for activities around crowdfunding, which you have huge interest for, and other aspects of the market, which is in your basket of activities?
You know, if on the humorous side, I would say that's probably one of the advantages, or one of the good things that came out of the pandemic last year, in that it gave us time to sit back and contemplate what our next move is as a market, as an industry. The draft rules came out during the pandemic period, during the lockdown period, and I think we were all contemplative enough during that period to be able to sit down, consider those rules and guidelines, give feedback, get the feedback assessed, and ultimately the final draft rules were issued. So really, during that period, there was a lot of work going on in planning and putting that structure into place. The structure now is in place, and I think parties are now looking at it and beginning to see where they fit in and how they're going to move with those new rules. We certainly are, and we have said we're going to go on the donor side to start with before we then go on to the investing side. And I think some other players who are already in the investing side are continuing with it, but they're modifying how they approach their clients. So the rules are in place, and you know, this is the end of a relatively long process. But as you know, even though you have succeeded in issuing the first set of rules, it doesn't mean that's the end of it. There still will be next versions and modifications that will come in as time goes along. So we're looking forward to the evolution of the market, especially regarding crowdfunding, but also in other areas, in tokenized securities and so on. So looking at evolution of the market in digital assets, we can see all those coming, and we'll continue to advocate and be part of the framework and the building of the structures that will support it.
That's nice to know. And it's always very important to engage regulators, and I like the fact that the pandemic enabled all these things we've been pushing for, and going forward, we'll see much more enabling regulations for your activities. But let's look at the second half of the year. I mean, what's in it for the Nigerian Unlisted Securities Market? What are the key drivers for us to watch? Nice to hear that you're already expecting 2 additional listings in the offing. So should we expect like 4 or 5 before we wrap up the year?
Yeah, I think we'll get about 4 or 5 securities to come into the market. Because again, as I said, there was a lot of pent-up activity that did not take place last year. So I expect as we continue to relax the restrictions that we had last year, as we continue to relax, people will seize the moment and start their businesses and continue to run. I always point to, and this is in absolute sympathy and wishing them the very best, I always point to companies that plan to set up their business, that plan to commence a new business line or commence operations early last year with full hopes, and who suddenly ran into this lockdown of a thing that was totally unprecedented. I believe that all those companies have not gone away really. They probably, some of them will come back, and this is the time when they'll start slowly unfolding. And so part of what we're trying to do is to encourage those kind of companies to come back into the market, come and seek their funding. Hopefully we'll be able to get their friendly funding. Interest rates are a bit lower now than before. So again, that's probably a bit of an incentive. So we do expect that the because it was not so much a collapse of the economy, but more of a forced shutdown, I think we can anticipate that many of those companies will come back into play, and they will come in through the capital markets. They will come in through, some of them will come into the banking industry, but I think a lot of them will come into the capital markets now. So I think the second half will be quite interesting for startups, for developmental work.
Okay, nice to hear that. Some glimmer of hope that the second half of the year will be interesting for startups and other companies, encouraging them to leverage the market. At least if we have 4 listings come on board in the unlisted securities market, that will be another boost for the NASD and, of course, the operations. Thank you very much, Mr. Bola Ajomale, for the time. Very interesting conversations around the opportunities for growth and scaling the unlisted securities market. Thank you. Mr. Bola Ajomale is the Managing Director of the NASD Plc. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will be all for this edition of the Market Review. As we had this conversation today, we looked at the opportunities for growth in the Nigerian Unlisted Securities Market. If you have any question or views or comments around this conversation, send them to otuabasi.abasecom@proshareng.com. And if you log on to our website, www.proshareng.com, you go to the right-hand side of the bar, scroll down and click on the Unlisted Securities Market and OTC. Click on it, you'll see all the developments in the NASD Plc, the exchange, and all the activities in the listed securities market, latest reports, latest developments, and why that market is also an interesting market to explore for investments. We've got it all captured on our website, www.proshareng.com. Also follow our social media platforms displayed on the screen for further updates and information. Till we come your way again, thank you for being part of the show. Remember to please stay safe and have a nice day.